I'm Cheryl Ann Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for those of us who still dare to want it all, who have big dreams and bold ambitions. I think we deserve to have a big, full life and the freedom to enjoy it. So let's design our next chapter together for brilliance, not burnout. Each week, I'll bring ideas, insight, and a fresh perspective to keep you growing into a life that feels as good as it looks. Brilliant Balance, your life, your way. Now let's get started. This is episode 384 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. From cynical to curious, stop shutting the door on good opportunities. So welcome back to the show. I'm so glad that you tuned in today, because if you did, you probably find that you are someone who has a tendency to shut the door, maybe prematurely, on what could be a really good opportunity. And so I want you to think about that before we even get into the content of today. I want you to just kind of take a little personal inventory and think about a recent time when an opportunity or an idea crossed your path. Maybe it was a business idea that somebody brought up at work. Maybe it was an investment opportunity that crossed your path. Maybe it was a personal growth opportunity. Maybe it was something you could buy, like online. You saw a product that you were intrigued by, like on Instagram. Maybe it was an idea that your kids brought you for something that they wanted to do or have, right? Or try as a family. We are crossed paths with opportunities all the time, right? From all directions. And while we seek some of them out, many, many more of them, I think, cross our paths sort of seemingly by happenstance. We didn't ask for it. It's just like, there it is, new idea to be evaluated. And we have to decide, are we going to say yes or no? Are we going to embrace the opportunity that's there or dismiss it? And the fact that we have to make that decision sort of illustrates that there are different ways that we might respond as a default, right? So I want you to think about, what is your default? Lots of times in two-parent households, kids will say, there's the default no parent and the default yes parent. We tend to be wired a little bit differently. And boy, do they know who to go to quickly, right? At work, sometimes maybe there's a team of leaders and we know like that one's going to be easier to get in the boat than this other one. Somebody has a really high kind of default no. So I want you to just check in with yourself, self-assess. Where is your default? Do you find that you are more likely to accept or reject new ideas or opportunities when they cross your path? Because the reality is there are probably three natural ways that we respond as individuals to new opportunities. Okay, and I want to talk about each of those three so you can find yourself somewhere in this spectrum. And then I want to tell you how you can really move along a continuum if you find that you are missing out on opportunities because of your default. Okay, so what are the three places that we might land? The first one, which is kind of the most default no, right? If you think about that end of the spectrum where we're set to default no, would be a response of cynicism. And I said at the beginning of this, stop shutting the door on good opportunities. Cynics, it's like the slammed door, right? Picture the little kid who comes to the front porch, right? And they're selling like tickets for some kind of fundraiser for their little league team. The cynic is like the slammed door. Here we go again. Every team needing to raise money. They probably don't even get to keep it, right? That attitude of like, somebody is out to get me. Here, there's a scam at play. I got to keep my guard up. This would be the cynic's like manifesto, right? So picture the cynic is associated with that slammed door, like immediate rejection. And what's really going on for the cynic is that their default mode is protection, right? Self-protection. They are assuming the worst about every opportunity and every person bearing an opportunity. It's always going to be a scam, a trick. There's something here that's too good to be true. This person is not to be trusted. They're not telling the truth, right? There's some kind of lie behind the offering. There's a belief maybe that like people like me wouldn't even get this kind of a break if we're talking about something like an investment opportunity or a business idea. I bet there's a catch. All of that, like, where's the gotcha moment going to be? They just don't want to be the sucker in the situation. Cynics keep that rejection bar really, really high, and it can feel like a protective shield, right? They can feel like they're sort of putting up a shield in front of themselves, but that shield often almost like wraps around them, closes in around them, and becomes more like a cage. Okay? Because cynicism has very real costs. When we move through the world sort of wrapped in our own protective cage, saying nobody is going to get through to me, nobody is going to kind of pull one over on me with their idea. Not only do we reject the true scams, right? The true things that are like, this is not good for me. We also reject everything else. And we end up missing out on a lot of good ideas because like the sieve is too strong. It's not letting anything through. It's filtering out every single thing. So we miss opportunities. We miss career growth opportunities like, promotions or job offers or business ventures because we think, well, it's too good to be true, right? It couldn't possibly be real if that's what it sounds like. We might miss out on, investment opportunities if we think every single thing is a scam. We might miss out on ideas that could broaden our worldview if we have our guard up thinking everybody's trying to take advantage of us. So there's a lot of missed opportunity that comes with this cynicism, but also we can really strain relationships, right? Cynicism can make us kind of an angry, guarded, negative person. And so when we assume that everyone else has a hidden motive, it's really hard to build meaningful connection with people. Right? We can't open our heart to them. We can't open our mind to them because we're so busy protecting ourselves. So that distrust creates an impediment to connection. We can have a hard time with friendships or romantic relationships if we're always thinking we're going to be let down. Right? I know this person is just that they don't mean what they say. They can't possibly mean that, right? If you're trying to explore a new relationship, you'll shut it down before it even gets off the ground. We can rob ourselves of support because people who initially were coming in offering support, guidance, encouragement might stop doing that if they're constantly rejected, right? So I think there's a real relationship cost inherent in cynicism. I think a really big cost of this is we lose our sense of like wonder and awe. There's so many good things in the world if we stay open to them, but a cynic often thinks that if something is good or it looks pure, that there's a catch. So again, that filter is so strong that things that could surprise or delight us or create wonder and awe, we're like looking for the other shoe to fall if we're in a cynical posture. It's like life becomes a battleground instead of an adventure, right? We're expecting the worst. The other shoe's going to fall any second here. And ultimately, that takes an emotional toll. It takes a physical toll on the cynic. There are real costs to keeping our guard up that high all the time. That kind of hypervigilance of attempting to protect ourselves does not come without a cost. There's higher stress levels, more anxiety. It can lead to burnout from having to be so on high alert all the time. I mean, there are very real health risks linked to those behaviors. And I think also we probably put our influence at risk. People don't want to follow a cynic, right? A cynic doesn't inspire people to want to follow them. Who wants to be led by someone who shoots down every idea, right? Creativity suffers. Collaboration breaks down, right? It really is an impediment on relationships. I was talking a minute ago about personal relationships, but I think this is how it plays out often in business relationships or work relationships. So again, cynicism starts off kind of all of these behaviors that I'm going to get into today have a positive, like maybe positive is the wrong word, but like a meaningful purpose to them. We believe they have a purpose. Cynics believe that they are protecting themselves and maybe even protecting those around them, their teams, their families, but they're actually limiting themselves and really cutting off opportunities before they even have a chance to sort of take shape. Okay. So that end of the spectrum where everything is a hard no and that door is a slammed door and we're really going to like tune out before we've even tuned in is an end of the spectrum that I think is the most dangerous when it comes to having a life where there is growth waiting for you, to having a life where good things are coming, right? Where there's like lots of future opportunities that will come your way. Cynicism is probably the most dangerous of the 3 set points that you could be in. So if we open the door just a little bit more, instead of being a slammed door, if we think about a guarded door, right? Maybe a door literally in this metaphor with a guard standing there, but the door is cracked open. This would be the middle ground that I would call skepticism. So if we're moving on the spectrum toward true open-mindedness, we arrive next at skepticism. And I love skepticism as a word because it often has the word healthy annexed to it, right? So healthy skepticism is a phrase that you've probably heard or used. Okay, skeptics are not immediately dismissive of an idea or an opportunity, but they do hesitate to commit. They want data. Often, right? They want proof. They want a level of validation before they give themselves permission to proceed. So there's a belief that they are being careful and reasonable and pragmatic and prudent, right? There's a lot of like being very good, air quotes, associated with this idea of skepticism. So a skeptic might look at a cynic and say, oh, come on, man, you got to at least give it a whirl, right? You have to at least hear them out on this idea before you decide. But they would also say to someone who like jumped right in with both feet, whoa, like you're being a little irresponsible. Okay. So skeptics like to get the data. They like proof. They like validation. It's like, oh, this sounds good. This sounds like there could be something here, but I'd like to see the data on it. They might ask themselves questions like, what if this doesn't work out? All right, what would be like my downside risk if this doesn't work out? They might take a wait and see approach. Very few like first movers or early adopters in the skeptics camp. Okay, they're going to hang back a little bit and kind of let other people go first and see what's happening out there before they proceed. So skeptics are in a much better place than cynics because they're at least open to possibilities. But skepticism still has some costs associated with it. And some opportunities will get missed if that skepticism meter gets turned up like to too cautious of a level. So if you think about sort of turning a volume knob in the middle here, cynicism is like, it's off. That door is closed tight. You are not getting through. No further questions, right? I'm not even going to consider this. It's like a hard no. A skeptic has a lot of room to maneuver that knob. Do I want to be real strong skepticism? Do I want to have just a little bit of it? Like, where do I want to adjust that dial? And if it's dialed up too far toward off, right? If the knob is too tight, then there are some additional costs to skepticism that I want to call out here today, because I suspect that a lot of you fit into this camp. Right? That there's a lot of listeners of this podcast in particular that would say, yeah, I embrace healthy skepticism. I think it's a really important part of my approach to decision making, right? It's kept me out of a lot of trouble. That could be true. If a lot of women who I cross paths with will say, I'm pretty risk averse. And I think people who would, call themselves risk averse might also identify with this label of healthy skeptic. I want to talk to all my fellow business owners and introduce you to my friends at Mackie. They are experts in providing CFO services that give you the clarity and confidence that you need, not only to succeed, but to make those strategic decisions that transform your business. Listen, running a business can be stressful, and trust me, I get it. You always want more time away from work to do the things you love, but you also want more profit. And that's where Mackie comes in, with their full-service financial, accounting, and executive guidance. With their Prosper for Business system, you'll have a trusted partner by your side, combining strategic planning, data analysis, and goal setting to help you grow further, better, and faster. And their results speak for themselves. Mackey's clients experience an average first-year profit increase of over 100%, and business owners report a 20% increase in time freedom. So start your journey to prosper today. Visit mackeyadvisors.com/brilliant balance and book your consultation. So one of the costs of skepticism is you will lose first mover advantage, right? And that is a real thing, right? First mover advantage is a real advantage. You can get a head start against other people who are hanging back, waiting for more data. So skeptics, because they're hesitating and analyzing and kind of waiting for more proof, sometimes will wait until it's too late and the opportunity will close altogether, or they will be so late to the game that they will actually have a competitive disadvantage, depending on what the idea is. Okay. So first mover advantage does not go to the skeptics. Second thing is we can lose our faith in our own intuition, like our own gut instinct, if we are overly reliant on logic and facts. I was brought up in a company, like I spent the first 15 years of my adult life in a company that was very reliant on data. Very. I mean, data-driven decision-making was the law. It's the only way to make decisions. If you didn't have all the data, you are not going to get anything greenlit. And that makes some sense in a big company that has to vet decisions across a lot of people who are spending a lot of money. But I will tell you that it did a number on my intuition, right? Spending 15 years in an environment where there were no decisions made on my intuition, the decisions were made on the data that I was able to bring to the table, caused me to doubt my intuition, right? I lost faith in my ability to make decisions. And actually, it turns out that is one of my best decision-making tools. I have a very, very well-developed intuition, and it leads me in really good directions when I listen to it. But sometimes, especially in that chapter of my career, I was overriding my intuition in the name of data. Okay. So we lose out on things that feel right because we can't guarantee success. And so we pass on it. And there are really good things in life where there will never be 100% proof before we start. Think about, I think a great example of this is when you're choosing like a university. When you are choosing where to attend, which university to attend, it's very hard to have like a spreadsheet that gives you the answer. You can line up all the tables and the data, but until you walk on that campus and kind of take a deep breath and say, where's this land for me? How does this feel? That's how a lot of us ended up making that decision about a university. If we try to strip it all down to just the data, the decision feels a little flat. And, obvious example, let's think about marriage. I mean, there is no spreadsheet that is going to tell you who to marry. In fact, a lot of us, if we married the person that a spreadsheet would have said, would be married to somebody very different, and our heart wouldn't have been in the decision. So I think the loss of intuition is a real potential cost of skepticism, even though we might think there's a lot of benefits to skepticism. Okay. Here's another one. This is another risk of the skeptical sort of level of this is overthinking. Skeptics require a lot of mental energy to evaluate every decision. That data analysis does not come without a cost. So, a friend invites you to an event, and instead of saying yes, you're researching the speaker and you're looking at the reviews of the previous event and you're analyzing whether it's worth it. And you're overthinking like really simple choices, which can create a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and create unnecessary stress. It just stresses you out, right? To be trying to think there's a right answer here and I have to get to the right answer by looking at all the data. So that overthinking is a real cost of skepticism. I think it also costs us our spontaneity and sense of adventure, right? Because skeptics like to know the outcomes in advance and are really attached to the idea of like, I have to know how this is going to turn out. Uncertainty can be a real struggle. And so, they won't book a last minute trip or try a new hobby that they haven't done before or take it on an unplanned opportunity because they didn't go looking for it. And somehow the fact that there's like an element of surprise or adventure gets read as this is wrong, right? This can't possibly be good for me because I didn't go looking for it. And so we miss out on the magic of the unexpected when skepticism is overdeveloped. Okay, so kind of the ironic twist here is that skeptics pride themselves on making really smart decisions, but sometimes they outthink themselves right out of a great opportunity, right? That overthinking and overanalyzing can cause us to actually reject what would actually be a really good opportunity. So if cynicism is slammed door, right? And skepticism is this closed but guarded door. What's the next option? I'm going to call the next option open-mindedness, right? Open-mindedness is like the open door. And the default mode here is curiosity. This is where we really want to look into, we want to examine something from the angles, right? And use different approaches for helping us evaluate the opportunity, including our intuition. And yes, there are people who jump into everything without any discernment at all, kind of a naivete that can be associated with being open-minded, saying yes to everything, right? Being like a sucker, right? That is what we don't want to be. And nobody wants to be that. And it's certainly not what I'm advocating. But I think our fear of being taken advantage of or being so open to everything that our life goes backwards causes us to not be open-minded. So open-mindedness has this curious characteristic, right? We really do want to hear more. We want to learn more. We're kind of leaned in saying, tell me more. Right? I want to explore this opportunity from various sides. And so the sweet spot is kind of where we pair open-mindedness with really smart curiosity, right? Where we're able to ask great questions so that we can be discerning. We want to be curious, not careless, right? That's the line in the sand here. So some questions that you can try if you want to be more open-minded, keep that door a little wider open, a little less guarded, a little less maybe purely analytical, would be, what's exciting me about this, right? Where do I feel lit up about this idea? I love that question. What's exciting me? Like, how does this feel, right? What's the best case scenario? What if it all worked out? What's the best thing that could happen here? What would that feel like? What would success look like for me? If I look at this opportunity, what would success look like? Right? What would have to be true is one of my favorite questions. What would have to be true for this to be a great idea? And I think it is fair in your curiosity to ask yourself, like, what are the risks of saying yes to this? Perfectly fair to look at what are the risks, but also what are the risks of saying no, right? What's the opportunity cost? What am I going to miss out on if I say no to this? Other great curious questions like, who else has done this, right? What was their experience like talking to some people? Your kid comes in and says, I want to go to Peru on vacation. And you're like, the first answer is like, absolutely not. Well, that's adorable that you think you want to go to Peru. But if you were curious, you'd be like, why? What's exciting about that? Tell me what's lit you up about Peru. What have you been learning about or, watching on TikTok, which is probably how they got the idea. So inviting them into a conversation where you're able to get underneath, tell me more about this. Help me see it from all sides instead of slamming that door. Right? Does this idea or this opportunity align with your bigger vision? Alignment is a great word to kind of bring into a curious conversation. Does this align with my bigger vision? I don't have to know exactly how to know, am I even interested in learning more? And so when I think about curiosity, I think about more or less, right? The answers to the questions that are coming up through that discussion, through that curious exploration, are either going to say more of this or less of this. They're going to move you toward it or away from it. So rather than feeling that pressure of like, I have to make an immediate no decision to protect myself, you can just sort of proceed with curiosity, right? So that every question, every step is getting you more interested, more excited. It's giving you more of a vision of what's possible. Or at some point you learn something that you're like, yeah, no, I don't think that one's for me, right? Open-mindedness is not a default yes. It's simply a willingness to hold that door open a little bit longer so that you can ask the questions. And I'll tell you what I see as the biggest kind of block to curiosity, right? Well, maybe two. The first biggest block is just fear. It's just fear. It's like, I can't allow myself to learn those answers because if I do, I might really want to say yes to this thing, and that's scary. So if I just say no right away, cynic, or I ask some really hard questions that maybe it isn't even possible to get the answers to because I'm trying to apply data to something that isn't really a data-driven decision, also that's going to help me like have a reason to say no. So safety, I don't have to do anything, right? That the kind of the fear that's on the other side of what if it turns out to be great? I might have to do it. That is the thing that just blocks this curiosity faster than anything else. Second thing would be time pressure. If somebody has perception of time pressure, like I'm worried I have to make a decision immediately and I don't have time to really satisfy my curiosity, it's just a no, right? It's just a no. And often that no is like, it's an accidental no. It's like, I'm just not going to answer. I'm not going to engage. If I don't engage and I don't answer, the clock will run out and that'll be a no, and I won't even have to have said anything at all, right? So it's kind of like the chicken way out to just not make a decision. And I think this shift, when we make an intentional shift to say, nope, I'm going to stay in an expansive container. I'm going to say, what's a reasonable amount of time for me to dance with my curiosity about this opportunity? And then I'm going to make a decision using what I've learned, kind of a balance between any data that I can get, right? Any facts that I'm able or experience that I'm able to kind of bring to the decision and my own intuition, my own gut instinct, my own sense of feelings about what do I want and what feels good. So we want to lead with curiosity and kind of temper it with discernment, right? Lead with curiosity, temper it with discernment. We don't want to be careless. We don't want to veer all the way to the careless side of like, yes to everything. It's a free for all. And we don't want to lean to the cynical side where it's a no to everything. We want to be in this curiosity tempered with discernment, open-mindedness phase where really cool things can come our way and we can use them to grow and evolve and move forward. Okay. So that is what I have for you today. Now, as always, my very favorite part about doing this podcast is when you get to talk back, when I hear from you about what unlocked with something that you heard in this episode. So if something in this episode struck a chord with you and you feel like sharing it with me, easiest way to do that is probably an Instagram DM these days. So Instagram, I'm at cskolnicki. Would love to get a DM from you saying, hey, I heard the podcast this week. This is where I think I fall. These are my thoughts. I love hearing from you. You also can always drop a comment on the show. So you can write a review of the show, including thoughts that you had on this particular episode or any episode. We read every single review. I love hearing them, especially when there was something meaningful. And, if you got something out of this that you think would be valuable for a friend or a colleague or a family member, I hope that you'll just forward them the episode because it's a great way for new people to learn about the show and for you to share these ideas generously with the people in your circle. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.